This is Objective 5.4. Configure, verify, troubleshoot basic device hardening, local authentication, secure password, access to the device, source address, Telnet SSH, and then login manner. So we'll look at these things. I think that I have a slide for each one, and then as we go through this, try to do the demos to demonstrate what each of those slides are saying. So local authentication, the default is a password only. And everybody's got the same password. Enable secret, whatever it is that we have. VTY, the enable or the login, Telnet password. If we have password, everybody's got the same password, whatever it is. Hopefully we won't use anything that insecure, but for lab purposes, I hope you get the idea that everybody's going to use the same password, be it a complex password or a simple password. So when we do this, it is difficult to know who did what, and we're unable to restrict the configuration capability. Individual passwords support login authentication using unique usernames and passwords, and then we can limit which commands each user uses, and to do this is a configuration beyond the scope of the CCNA exam, but you can do it by creating authorization levels. Remember, we had 0 to 15 authorization levels that where we assign specific commands to specific levels, and then we associate those with the users. And we'll see that whenever we go when we create the passwords here in just a minute. Simple changes for users' names, username, password, commands to create users and passwords, which is what we're going to do, and use login local device login on the VTY lines. So what does that mean? Let's bring the simulator over and see if I can make some of this work. The first thing let's do is look at the configurations that are in the router. If we'll show run, we have an IP address on. Yeah, we do on gig 00. 192.168.1.1 is the IP address. We have the Telnet line here, line VTY04, and I want to start out with that and the yes, everybody's got the same password. Right now there are no passwords because I just went into enable mode. What I wanted to do was start out with the Telnet, if I can Telnet there. If we Telnet to 192.168.1.1, the connection is refused, closed by the foreign host. If I look at it, I don't have a password set on the line. It says to log in, but there's no password. Typically you'll get a message that says that login is authorized but no password set. So if we go into here and enable, so we're in enable, aren't we? And config T, line VTY04, line VTY space 04, and then we can do password. So hopefully we have that now. Control Z, and we go back to this guy, and let's try to do 192.168.1.1, and we can log in with password, and that's what they were talking about. And then we try to enable, no password is set, so we don't have an enable password or a enable password set on it. So we can now go into here and config T, if I could spell, config T, and we'll do enable secret, S-E-C-R-E-T. Oh, let's do an enable. Let's do an enable password, and then here we got level, the exact level, what kind of we're going to do, and we can specify encryption, but let's just do enable password, and let's do an enable secret. I want these here, C-C-R-E-T, so that when we get to a little bit later in the objectives. So now if we go back to this guy and we'll try to enable, again we're still logged in, and it asks for the password. Secret, we can get there. But again, everybody's using the same password. So what I can do is go in here, username, and then the word, the name, I'll say Jim, and then privilege level, and the privilege level is the thing that we can use 0 to 15 and configure different privilege levels and assign different commands to each of those. So let's say privilege here, and 0 to 15, 15 being the highest, we want to make this guy still be root level. And then the password, specify the password for the user or secret. Let's do password, and then 0 unencrypted, 7 specified hidden password will follow, but let's just do password on this thing. Now let's go to, actually I'll just make it easier, let's go to this guy and see if we can Telnet to 192.168.1.1 password, secret, because I still haven't changed anything, that still haven't changed the login method on here. So now I have to go to line VTY04 and type login local. What tells it to use the local database, the usernames and passwords that I have configured here to do that. So now let's see if it will ask me to username, and it was Jim, and the password was password. I now know that Jim's going to be logged into this thing, and I can tell what Jim has done. So username, password, login, local. We can also do the same thing if we use the login local here. So we could go to config T, and we have to do AAA new model, and then we'll just say login, and then whatever we are, and let's see if we can do local. Except that's not the command. We have to go back with AAA on all these things, and now we want to do authentication, and now we can do login, and we can either do a word or do default, and then what do we want to use to do that, and we will now use local, our local database, in order to get into there. So let's see if, okay, we're back to the privilege exec mode, the enable mode. If we disable, we're at the user prompt, and if we log out, and this, because this is the login, remember that we're doing this thing. When I try to log in, it asks for the username, and this would be Jim, and the password would be password. And we go enable, and we still have our enable secret password to do those things with. So the local database, login local on the VTY line, and create the username and use the local database by specifying the AAA new model in order to get there. So we can set individual passwords, assign them to individuals to do that. Secure passwords, all of them except the enable secret are in plain text. The enable secret is an MD5 hash. The default configuration, and we've looked at it and we'll look at it again, is a no service password encryption. So we can use the service password encryption command in order to do that. We're back to our device here. If we show run, we've made several passwords. We have our enable secret here. Here's the MD5 hash for the word secret. The enable password, plain text. If we go down here, and we could have as you saw, hopefully when we did the making this user, we could have encrypted the password by using the secret word secret in front of it instead of password. And down here in the line VTY04, the password is password. Not a big deal now that we have actually we haven't done that. I've restarted the router and I didn't save the configuration. We don't have the login local here. So if we go into this thing and back up to the top, the default, one of the things that we have here is no service password encryption. We can change that by going into config T and do service password encryption. And if we show run, then we have level 7 password encryption. Notice it's not as big a deal as the MD5 hash. So we have the ability to encrypt our passwords by using the service password encryption command. It's not very strong, not extremely strong. If you go on the internet, you'll have several websites that say put the hash in and I'll crack it for you in about 3-4 seconds. Device access, we can filter packets in the network by securing access to the device. Source address, access control list. Again, we can apply access control lists to the Telnet line. And we can use Telnet or SSH. SSH obviously being the more secure. We change the transport protocol in order to use the secure shell. Authentication using username and password. We can also use the access control line, access control list on the VTY line. So let's see if I can make that work. Okay, here we're at the command prompt. So what we want to do is first go into config T, and make an access control list. Access list 1, and we'll permit host 192.168.1.2. That's the one that I've been using. The other one is 192.168.1.3. So we'll try each of those after we hopefully get this thing applied and see if we have restricted Telnet to a particular IP address. And this is the case where you probably want to restrict it to the network administrator's IP address in order to do those things. Okay. Permit, that doesn't work, does it? As list 1. Permit host 192.168.1.2, and let's see if that now works. Yes. So now we go to the line VTY04, and access class is what we use here. We use an IP access group on the interface. Here we're going to use just access class, and then the access list, an IP access list number, and this is going to be 1, and then in or out, and we'll apply it in. So hopefully, show run, let's see if we actually have applied anything to that VTY line 04 access class 1 in, and we have our access list up here. So let us see if this guy can still Telnet. Telnet to 192.168.1.1, and it was G, which I still continue to try to, and password. So we're in with that guy. We're in a router, and we can go to enable and secret and configure it just as if we were on the router. The next thing is to try to see if our list works. So let's try Telnet 1.1 connection refused by remote host. So that's exactly what we would expect to find there. If we show access lists, permit, we have 2 matches here for the permit 192.168.1.2 to Telnet and the username and the password. So we can apply access control lists to our VTY line in order to make it better. Use the access control list. So we've done 2 things here. We're on authentication with the username and password. We've done that. And we also use the access control list on the VTY line in order to use those usernames and passwords with the login local command. The last thing that we can do is put a text message up, present a warning message, word it so that prosecution is possible. The reason I say that is years ago, several years ago now, somebody got onto a network, hacked it, did a lot of damage, took him to court. It got dismissed because the wording was insufficient. The wording said something like, welcome to our network, and the defense said welcome to our network. It didn't say don't hack our network. So when you do these things, word them so that if somebody does do some damage, you can go back and prosecute. There are three banner types. The first one is the MOTD, message of the day. Shows before the login prompt is displayed. It's used for messages that will frequently change message of the day and are required only for a temporary period. Could be note that today router A will be down for maintenance at midnight, something like that. The login is shown before the login prompt, but after the message of the day banner is displayed. Unauthorized access, this is the one that you want to word so that you can prosecute. And the exec is shown after the login prompt. It's used to supply information that's intended for authorized users. So after we get on, we should be able to see that. What I'd like to try to do is go back to the router and see if we can actually configure these things and then go all the way back and see what happens. So we're in here, we could do config. I'll have to learn how to spell config, huh? So we got, what is it? Banner. And then we have login and message of the day. This does not give me the ability to do the exec banner. So we can do MOTD. What we have to do now is to use a delimiting character, and this shows a C. You need to, and what it does is say I'm going to start probably a special character. This is the MOTD, and then we're going to close it. If I had used the C and I had C in a word, that's where that would stop. And then we can say banner, what, login. Banner right, it would work better, huh? Login, and we'll do a delimiting character. We can use the dollar. It can be any character. Login, and we need the same one at the end, the start and the end. Something like if we put in quote marks. So if we go in here and do an end and do a disable and then a log out, press return, we get both of these messages, the MOTD and the login message. So you can display messages. The exec message should be after we actually get logged in. That's the one that we would display for the users that we want. Messages can be displayed on it. So in this segment we talked about local authentication with the login local, and if we did it for the router itself, we had to use the AAA new model command in order to create the new login model rather than the single password that everybody uses, which by default, which makes it difficult to track who did what. We created a username and a password. We secured the passwords with the service password encryption command, and then we restricted device access with both usernames, passwords, as well as source IP filtering. So that should take care of Objective 5.4. Also login banners, I didn't say, but we did those too. The next is device maintenance, password recovery, file system management, and we'll talk about upgrades a little bit. See you there.